Hey everyone, it's Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We're going to talk about this defense and why I think there's a good chance they're a top 5, maybe even better unit this year, but it has to be compounded with good plans. And we'll talk about that because Teryl Austin talked earlier this week. We'll also talk about Aaron Rodgers, what he said, and that I thought was interesting about how the offense is growing in its fluidity and why Darnell Washington could be the threat that no one's looking for. All here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. I write for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, but I do this show every Monday through Friday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit FanDuel, the FanDuel app today to start planning out your futures bets now. More on them later. All right, Steelers fans, I teased towards the end of the last show. Before I get into that, I just want to say I am happily back home. If you're listening, you probably can't tell that, but if you're watching, you can see I'm back in my home environment. I'm happy back home, but it was an eventful training camp, a hot training camp, but an eventful training camp. And I want to say thank you to all the listeners, viewers, and fans of the show who took the time to say hi to me. It always means a lot when I get to interact with you all. Sorry, I can't name all of your names because if I started that, by the time I finished, the show would need to be over. So thank you to everyone. You all are appreciated. But let's get back to the Steelers defense, to the talking point that I teased yesterday at the end of the show to talk about today. I really do believe this defense has a legitimate potential to be a top 5 unit. And when I say legitimate, I don't just mean like there's a chance. I mean like there might even slightly be a likelihood that it happens. Now, as I talk about that, the Steelers defense has been a top 10 defense the last 3 years, all 3 years under Teryl Austin as the defensive coordinator. And people need to understand that is very good. It's what's carried this team to the playoffs 2 out of those last 3 years, even while the team has had 5 different starting quarterbacks during that time. And the one time that they've missed the playoffs was when they were missing the best defensive player in football, TJ Watt, for half the season. So clearly, this has been a very good unit, but it hasn't been an elite unit during those years. And you want it to be an elite unit. And elite, at least to me, means top 5. And that's where I think this unit can be if it takes the pieces that it's added this year and fits them into what they're trying to do in the right ways. I've talked a lot about Jalen Ramsey and how I feel he could be the ultimate NFL villain this year to everyone they face. Also, he returned to practice on yesterday for the Steelers' final practice of training camp, but and he got interception. Go figure, he's Jalen Ramsey. But I think he changes entirely what the Steelers are going to be doing on defense, at least in the secondary, and how that impacts every other level of the defense as well. But that has to be compounded with a good plan to maximize the other talent on this unit as well. A big priority has to be getting more one-on-ones with TJ Watt and ultimately be it just winning in the pass rush. But to win in the pass rush, you need better coverage, and you also need to stuff the run consistently to set up more 3rd and longs where that aggressiveness that you want to call, that you have these guys for, can be used to maximize its talent and create more turnovers for this defense to be a game-changing and league-changing type of defense. We got to talk to the Steelers defensive coordinator, Teryl Austin, on Monday before practice about this, and I asked him about the challenges of going from a unit that's been consistently top 10 but needing to get there. We also talked about the alignment with TJ Watt and how they're trying to put in new efforts to change things, to make things different this year. And I thought he gave some interesting responses. Here was our talk with Teryl Austin on Monday when we were asking him about the plans for the defense.
You've coached the top 10 defenses scoring-wise in all 3 of your years here as a coordinator. What's the thing that you're trying to do this year to maybe ramp things up to be different than past years to put yourself in the top 5, top 3 categories?
Yeah, I just think we have to be better and more consistent more often. I think we have some, we'll have a couple weeks or so where we're not playing up to our standard and what we have to do, and we have to get those out of our system. We just have to play well for all 17. I was going to say 16. That tells you how old I am. All 17 weeks. to give us an opportunity to be a top defense. And that's, that's always our goal whenever we, put the hats on and do those things. We want to be the best in the league. And until we get there, we're going to continue to work at it.
A lot's been made about TJ switching sides this year. Last year against the Giants, in that game, he switched sides a good amount, and then after that, not so much. Do you remember why you guys kind of decided to back off of it last year and why it makes sense to reintroduce that this year?
Oh, I don't know if there was anything to back off. It's just sometimes things happen that way, just how the season unfolds. And I think at some point maybe Alex was out, so he wanted to stick to his favorite side and all that stuff. So it's we like when he moves around because it's harder for teams to just say, hey, TJ's going to be over here, let's block it, set the protection. So we'll move him around a little bit, but again, we're not going to move him around to our detriment. We know he's had some really great seasons coming on our defensive left, offensive right side, and he can still do that. We just we're trying to open it up for him and for others so we can get more sacks.
You talked about alignment earlier, as far as where guys line up in blitz. It seems like, at least in practice, you guys are, Alex is moving over A-gap when he's in there. You guys are moving things around. Is there an increased input from guys like Carl and Denzel to help with, hey, let's try these different looks up front to mix with the things that you guys are doing in the secondary because the DBs are flying around everywhere?
Yeah, I think it's a staff. As a staff, we get together and we always want to look at what we're doing and where we can be better and where we can be more effective and where we can give offenses more problems. So I think in the offseason, all that stuff started to come to fruition, and then we're just trying to look at it to see who can do it. I mean, it's all great on paper. You can draw it up on paper, hey, this will work, this will look good, but until you get out there and make sure you have the guys that do it, you got to find that out, and that's what we're in the process of doing, finding that out.
So a few things I thought were interesting about those questions that we gave Teryl Austin in his responses. One, when I was talking about Carl and Denzel, that's Carl Dunbar, the defensive line coach, and Denzel Martin, the outside linebackers coach. Both of them essential in trying to in drawing up how they get pressures, and it seems like they are getting more input, at least in my opinion. They're being able to give more input and getting more liberty to say, hey, this is how we're going to do this year. We're going to switch things up and get things to work. Now, I think there's something to the part where Austin said getting the bad weeks out of their system, talking about that, because that's something the Steelers struggled to do at the end of last year. If you go back to the end of last year, you saw the miscommunications, the mistakes, the mental errors that were compounded, by the defense. While the matchups, they were even when they got the matchups right that they were trying to scheme up, and they got it right on paper, still resulted in losses at times. Like I always talk about in the playoff game, the first touchdown that Lamar Jackson threw for the Ravens, they baited him into a really good situation for the defense where Cam Hayward was lining up as if he'd do an underneath zone. He dropped back into a deep zone. He was in position to intercept the ball when you look at the all-22, and he just watched it go over his head. And it's like, man, if he had just played that ball well as just a normal DB in that situation, that scheme would have worked perfectly. They would have intercepted Lamar Jackson on the first possession of the game, and that could have set an entirely different tone. So like even the basics, and that was Cam Sutton, even the basics sometimes when they drew everything up right weren't being executed last year. And Teryl Austin's like, we have to get out of that funk a lot quicker this year. And I think that's what he's kind of talking about. So what can be different to make sure that doesn't happen this year? Well, I think part of it has been the investments this team has made to shore up different positions in this defense that were weaknesses. For example, Dante Jackson, I thought, had a good start to last year, but the injury kind of side railed him and made him not as good. In the cornerback position, I think, whereas last year it was, kind of, you were hoping that, one young guy in Joey Porter Jr. as a second-year player could be good, but then everyone else around him was kind of like, yeah, not as reliable of an asset. But this year, you now have Joey Porter in his third year, and I think he looks really, really good in training camp. He had a really good breakup one-on-one with DK Metcalf in the end zone yesterday during practice. But now you pair him with Darius Slay, a guy who's a consummate professional who led the NFL in pass breakups last year, and you also get to put him with Jalen Ramsey, who just looks completely nasty at the cornerback position. I loved his sit down and chat with the Pivot podcast and Ryan Clark and Fred Taylor and Jenny. I thought those guys did an amazing job talking to him. Go check out that podcast and listen to Jalen Ramsey. I think that the energy he gave off was a very positive one that could be very encouraging to Steelers fans to be even more excited about it. I also think that Ramsey, Slay, and Porter has a chance to be the best cornerback trio in the NFL this year. Just look at the way they're playing, what I know about these guys, and how I think they can grow together. You mix that, even if it's not the best, if it's one of the very best. If you mix that with a better run defense, with the investments they've made in the defensive line, and that can make the pass rush with just those two things even better, which the pass rush, by the way, is the Steelers' best asset, because and if it makes it more dynamic, this team is that much better. If all those things happen, that's what makes you an actual elite unit, and that will guarantee them to be a top 5 unit at the end of the year if they can stuff the run, cover the pass well, and pressure the quarterback. The Steelers could have all 3 of those aspects of their game in spades, and that can be a difference maker that makes them different from last year. If they do that and the plan comes together, I think that's a ticket for a team to be better than they were last year and go farther than really we've seen a Steelers team go in the past several years. It's doable, but as Teryl Austin says, it's easy to draw that stuff up on paper, but you need to see it actually work in the game. Those are the things we will be watching game by game, including the joint practice coming up on Thursday, where we get to see them interact with the Buccaneers, and of course the preseason game as we continue to get closer to the start of the regular season and see where the Steelers are going. But for all that to work, that must be compounded by a decent offense, or with a decent offense. We'll talk about that next, as Aaron Rodgers also spoke to us yesterday, and we'll get some of his thoughts about how the offense can be more fluid. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. Be right back. But first, remind you, this show is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before Week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. One key future bet is always who's going to be the NFL MVP. Right now, Lamar Jackson is the going favorite at plus 430, which I think is a pretty good bet. I like Lamar Jackson as an MVP candidate this year, but I'm really intrigued by one person. That's Jaden Daniels. He's a plus 1,000 right now with those kind of odds. That's the 5th best odds of all players. I kind of like that bet right there. So go and place your bet for MVP by going to the FanDuel app today and start planning all your futures bets now, because Futures Day is just one day on August 26th and one day only. Go to FanDuel, play your game. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here. We're going to get to Aaron Rodgers in a sec, but I do want to take a quick break to readdress something that we talked about on yesterday's show, and that's regarding the Cam Hayward situation. Now, I'm not going to go back into my argument why I think Cam Hayward's justified to say what he's saying. I also think the team is justified to protect their salary cap as best they can. I don't think there's a good guy or a bad guy in this situation, and I think that's a big part of the problem with this is there always has to be a bad guy. But I have to say, I am disappointed in Steelers fans who are attacking. I get that you're displeased with Cam Hayward, but the level of insults I've seen from people that I see on social media and see declare themselves diehard Steelers fans, and people who have seen this franchise through all these years, I saw like Cam Hayward being called Scam Hayward, and like just really nasty things being said. This is a guy who has fought through several injuries in his career and fought back in those seasons when he was injured to get back and play for them. And this is a man in Cam Hayward who in his 14 years of playing for the Steelers, only 2 of them has he missed games due to injury. And people are calling that man Scam Hayward and saying he's so selfish and he doesn't care about the team. And look, he's asking for more money. I don't think he's asking for money that's going to bankrupt the Steelers. I think he's just asking for a decent pay bump that puts him among the top 15, maybe even top 10 defensive tackles. I don't think he's looking for #1 defensive tackle money. I think that once this deal gets reached, it won't crush the Steelers salary cap. It won't stop them from making moves in the future years. I think that this is not that big a deal, but the visceral response of just several Steelers fans and a lot of people who I've seen call into radio stations and do all these things, I thought Pittsburgh fans were better than this. I thought Pittsburgh fans were smarter to realize, like, hey, like, you know, guys are trying to get their money. Guys are trying to get paid, but he's not trying to bankrupt you. I just I expected better out of Steelers fans. And maybe that's my fault. Maybe I shouldn't be expecting better out of Steelers fans. But I thought that Steelers fans would handle this a lot better than they have. It's been rather disappointing. And that's not to say it's all Steelers fans, because I know a lot of y'all out there. There's a lot of people out there too that are like, hey, I don't care what it is. He's let them work out how much he's going to get paid. But I just got to say, yeah, like the insults and the things for Cam Hayward. I would get that if this was like anyone outside of Cam Hayward or TJ Watt, but those are dudes that when they put on the shield, when they put on the uniform, there are very few people in the history of the organization outside of like the Super Bowl winning teams that had the guys that were core people of the franchise. They are like right up there with it. Like, Cam Hayward's got 4 first-team All-Pros. That matches Mean Joe Green, man. Like, I just think that he deserves better than that from people. Even if you think he shouldn't get the pay raise, I think the insults and the name calling, I don't think that should be in the conversation. Anyways, let's get back to what I wanted to talk about, and that's Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron Rodgers spoke yesterday before practice, and it was the last practice of training camp. I think the offense has looked a lot better. And it looks a lot more fluid. You're seeing since the start of camp, and even since the first couple of weeks of camp. And remember, I said as we were going through those practices where the defense was just dominating at every turn, I said this would be the case. Eventually, they would figure it out, and they have gotten better. But a big part of that, I think, of that them getting better is Rodgers' improved chemistry with his connections and his targets with guys like DK Metcalf, Roman Wilson, Pat Freiermuth, and even Darnell Washington, who I'll get to in the next segment, by the way. Aaron Rodgers, his connection with those players has continued to fit into what the team is trying to do, and it's something that I'm impressed by as far as how he's building not just a connection on the field, but also it appears off the field and how he just naturally is around the guys. And I have to admit, it dispels a lot of the things that I thought was buying into as far as rumors of him being a locker room issue. Now, I will say, that could easily change as soon as the season gets started and there's some adversity with losses, and maybe he throws some people under the bus, and then we start actually revisiting that. And that could all well happen. But at least right now, he's fitting into the team. He's not trying to take things over. He's being the experienced veteran who's bringing his insight, and that's playing a big part in how the team's offense is finding its footing right now in training camp and as they continue through the preseason. I want you to take a listen to how he addressed us in the media when he was talking about the offense before the practice on Tuesday, because he talks about the growing chemistry with guys and people that impress him as he's going on. And also, I thought it was interesting. He talked about being on the headset and some differences with how things appear with the Steelers than with other teams he's been with. Here was Aaron Rodgers on Tuesday before Steelers practice.
Aaron, it seems like the fluidity continues to improve with the first team offense out here. What's leading to that?
Well, I think I'm playing a little bit better. I feel comfortable in the offense, and DK and I have been getting on the same page a little more frequently, which helps. But we've had some injuries. Obviously, Calvin's been out for a while, so we'd love to get him back. But it gives opportunities for other guys. I think Scotty's done a really nice job, made a lot of plays for us. I think Roman's starting to feel confident in what he's doing. I love the tight ends. I think you're getting a lot of production out of those guys. Again, with Johnny out, one guy I'd love to single out is Connor. I mean, Connor does the right thing every time. He's a really smart football player, and the smartest players are the best players. So he's the kind of guy you feel real confident that you can put him in there at any time and know he's going to be on the same page.
You said that you were sometimes the voice of reason on the headset. What does that sound like? What's an instance when you would get on there?
Well, sometimes people freak out on there and start yelling and screaming. Or other times people are talking that shouldn't be talking. But I'm more of the comic relief on there, I would say, at least week one, with some timely or ill-timely jokes, untimely, I guess. But I've heard some freakouts in the past.
Now, I got to say, I think there was an interesting little shady shot he threw in there at past people. He didn't specify, so he could be with the Jets, could be with the Packers, but I thought that was interesting. But after the first 2 weeks of training camp, I was pretty close to just being fully committed to the train of, hey, the Steelers absolutely got to go get wide receiver 2, whether it's free agency, whether it's trading for it. They need to go get somebody or just sign Amari Cooper, just get it done, because I was like, I don't know who's going to emerge. And I want to be clear, I'm not exactly off that train entirely. I still think that there's a potential for that. But I am leaning more now into the idea that they might not need to make a big move there for this year, because Rodgers has been connecting with his targets in more and more ways as training camp has gone on, and he's grown in that fluidity that he talked about. And I think it's impressive to see, and he's liking the process that the Steelers are going through to get to where they're trying to go with Arthur Smith, with Mike Tomlin, with the players around him. And I think that that's a very encouraging sign. And you could see that, again, with the comment with the headsets. I just thought that was funny. He was just like, some guys were yelling. That's definitely a shot at someone that he has worked with who used to yell in the headsets, and he was definitely annoyed by. And it's one of those things that, like, maybe that random person never sees that comment and knows exactly who they are, but a way of, like, throwing a dig at them without officially saying their name or people catching up on that. But I see you, Aaron Rodgers. I see what you got going on there. But, again, I think none of this that we're talking about, like all the fluidity and the increased things that we're seeing and the impressive things we're seeing him growing in this offense, none of that means that everything is going to work and this offense is going to be top 10, that Rodgers is going to make everything great. But these are encouraging signs of development for an offense that's been struggling for the past several years to be relevant. Last year, Arthur Smith turned them from a bottom 5 offense, which they regularly had been under Matt Canada, into a middle of the league offense. I believe they finished 16th in scoring last year. And that's better. That was kind of what you want, but you want to take them to take a step up this year too with Aaron Rodgers and of course with the offensive line and all the other investments they've made. All that makes sense. But again, I think that it's impressive to see this chemistry has been growing, and we haven't even seen Calvin Austin in maybe like a week and a half to 2 weeks now. Johnny Smith's missed the past few practices with injuries. I'm becoming less concerned that the worry with Rodgers, that Rodgers could be bogged down by not having a bona fide wide receiver 2 out there with DK Metcalf. I think he might be able to make this work with, if Calvin Austin's back. I think Calvin Austin does need to be back, but a Calvin Austin, a Roman Wilson, a Scotty Miller, a Pat Freiermuth, a Johnny Smith, and a Darnell Washington, I think that could work with what he's able to do cerebrally. Again, of all the things, and this is something else that I thought Jalen Ramsey said on the Pivot podcast that was really good. Of all the things you're impressed by with Aaron Rodgers, with the arm, with the quick release, with the accuracy, it's up here. That's it. That's impressive. It's the confidence that he exudes. It's the cerebral abilities that he's able to put into his game that I think is still absolutely there. And I think that's helping this offense get things around a little bit sooner. Now, again, we got to see it in games. We haven't even seen them play against another team with Aaron Rodgers yet. So we got to see it first before we commit to it. And that's even kind of what Teryl Austin's saying about the defense, right? But still, I think that there are some positive things. Now, on the topic of the wide receiver too, I do think that there is a caveat to that I do think that even though Aaron Rodgers might be able to make this offense work without investing in a wide receiver 2, I do think if DK Metcalf goes down, that's when not having a bona fide wide receiver 2 might be a huge problem. But hey, who knows? Maybe I'm underestimating Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson, because Roman Wilson has been stepping up for the past 2 weeks and looking better and better and better. And maybe he becomes that guy. I'm not saying he definitely will, but before I thought that was most likely not going to happen. I still think it's likely not going to happen, but I think there's a better chance of it now that I've seen Roman Wilson practice a bit more and find his place in this offense. He's doing a better job. So whether or not the Steelers need to be prepared for DK Metcalf to get hurt, that's a whole other question for another episode. But my point here is that offensive fluidity is improving, and that's something we want to see more of as the offense, as the team gets closer to the regular season. Next, I want to talk about one target for Aaron Rodgers that I think continues to show he's going to be different this year, and that's the big man, Darnell Washington, a.k.a. Mount Washington, here in Pittsburgh. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. Be right back. But first, I want to remind you, the show is also brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year because NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. This year, Yahoo is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, me and Locked On Steelers listeners are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years, and the updates they're rolling out with this month are wild in the best way. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Go to yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Let's make this fantasy season the best one yet by doing that at Yahoo Fantasy. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here. I just got done telling y'all and talking to y'all about Darnell Washington, right? That I'm going to talk about Darnell Washington. But, man, I just think the Steelers, they need to make sure that dude's on the field a lot this year. I've never said that about a second tight end or a third tight end, because that's what he is right now. He's the third tight end behind Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith. But Darnell Washington is looking different this year, man. During this camp, I have seen him be more agile and adept as a route runner than I've seen anyone at the size of 6'7" and officially 260 pounds. He's more like 280 to like 290, but that's neither here nor there. But even so, if it's more weight, it's even more impressive because he's running better routes. He's setting up the start of his routes better and better, which is making it harder for defenders to just stick with him and try to stop him from using his size to beat them. And I think it's leading to him getting more and more open. We saw that with the Mason Rudolph touchdown pass in the Jaguars preseason game. And just yesterday during practice, Aaron Rodgers during 7 shots, his first look, DK Metcalf, corner route to the back of the end zone with Joey Porter Jr. Joey Porter Jr. covers it well, swats it away, and shows really good coverage there. So Aaron Rodgers is like, okay, bet. You want to take him away? Take this away. The next one is just a fade to Darnell Washington. And he just bullies Deshaun Elliott. It boxes him out, Aaron Rodgers just throws it up high. He snatches it. It's an easy touchdown. And I'm just like, how do you stop that? I don't know. And Washington could legitimately be a red zone cheat code for the Steelers this year. Now, personally, if you've been paying attention to this show, I've also been saying that for the last 2 years, and I don't understand why that hasn't been a thing for the last 2 years. It's a simple thing that wasn't even – I'm going to stop myself before I start snapping, but you get my point. This should have been a thing. This is one of my ticks from Mike Tomlin, whether it was Arthur Smith or Matt Canada. Darnell Washington, when you get in the red zone, you get inside the 10, say, hey, Darnell, run to the end zone. This one's going to you. And I think that you'd have a likelihood of getting that, making that a touchdown. But again, with his developed skill set too, because now he's running better routes, I don't think it's as simple as before where, he's coming off the ball. Defenders could probably say, hey, he's going to run that fade, and I'm just going to sit on that, and I'm going to try my best to disrupt him and keep him from getting to the spot that he wants to get to so that the quarterback can throw that up to him and get a touchdown. But now with his developed skill set and him being better at running routes, I think it's becoming harder to even defend that than it was before. So even if it's not goal to go, I think that if you're like inside the 20 or in the red zone and he just catches the ball at the 5 and he's got momentum, I don't know who stops that man getting into the end zone unless you just straight up take out his knees. And let me tell you, them legs are still thick, and you try to take out his knees, you might take yourself out because that dude is a big man. And he's getting quicker. He's getting more controlled with his footwork. I'm just continue to be impressed by Darnell Washington, and I do think the Steelers need to make sure they find a way to use him more at least. So all these things that we're talking about with the offense, whether it's Robin Wilson or Calvin Austin or wide receiver 2 or the offensive line and Aaron Rodgers, and I haven't even gotten to Darnell Washington with his skill set. We're talking about that. I haven't even gotten to how good of a blocker he is and how he erases defenders in space. If there's an offensive player in training camp who's impressed me the most, it might be Darnell Washington. Now, I will say Roman Wilson has stepped up because I wasn't sure if Roman Wilson was going to step up. But he did, and he deserves credit for that. I think Broderick Jones and Troy Faltano have taken really big steps in training camp as well. But Washington just looks like something different to me, man. And I do think there's something there to this. Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers, if they can find ways to just get Darnell Washington involved to be a dangerous scoring threat when you get in the red zone, that could be something else that lessens the need for a heavy investment into a wide receiver too. Because especially if you're getting in the red zone and you're just thinking like, hey, that now they have to account for not just Pat Freiermuth as a red zone threat, not just Johnny Smith as a red zone threat, not just DK Metcalf as a red zone threat, and all of those guys, big, good route running red zone threats and the potential of running the football. But now you also got to worry about this 6'7" dude who's just going to box out whoever you put on him. I think there's some real potential there with that, man. And I know, if you followed this show for the past few years since they drafted Darnell Washington, I've been saying I don't understand why they don't just do that more often. But I think that there's some real potential there for this to happen. And it doesn't mean that they shouldn't go get a wide receiver too, but I do think that them having Darnell Washington on the field this year is going to be a much bigger threat than people realize. And maybe the sum of all their parts, whether it's the top wide, whether it's DK Metcalf with Austin and Wilson and Miller and Skoranek. I don't want to leave Skoranek out of that. But also with Freiermuth, Johnny Smith, and Darnell Washington, maybe that summary of all those parts is enough for Omar Khan to be like, you know what? Don't need to spend big at getting a wide receiver too, whether it's trade or free agency. Let's put that money to another backup offensive tackle, or put that money to another weak spot that they see on the depth chart somewhere. Maybe that could be the answer there. But maybe that could be wide receiver too. Who knows? We'll still have more to go over that. But now that camp's over, we still have a lot to review, and when it comes to this team and how they're getting ready for the season. And we're still learning about what this team is going to be like. And we get to learn more about that on Thursday. So tomorrow, this is the Wednesday episode. Thursday, when they take on the Buccaneers for their joint practice at Acrisure Stadium. I'll be on hand with my colleagues at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'll be reacting to it there. We're probably writing about it for the Post-Gazette, but I'll also be here talking about it for our Friday episode. So be sure to tune in for that. But tomorrow, we still want to get you ready for that joint practice, and we still have more things to talk about from training camp. Joining me to talk about that will be our friend Jenna Harner from Channel 11 WPXI. Do tune in for that episode. It's going to be a good one. Again, I'm Chris Carter. Thanks for tuning into the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky. All social media is the same handle every time, at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down the Pittsburgh Steelers on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow with Jenna Harner here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.